Welcome to What Do You Want to Do, the show that will hopefully help you figure out what you want to do in life or reconnect you to what you love doing. Each show has a guest who is doing what they want to do, whether it's in their career or in addition to their regular job. Most importantly, we want to help you realize that no matter your age, you too can do what you want to do if you have the will to do it. Now here's your host, Leonard Kaplan.
Hi, and welcome to What Do You Want to Do? This is part 2 of my interview with Sarah Infini Takagi. As you saw last week or heard, the conversation ranged from the spiritual to the musical to the comedic to the jazz influenced. And also in part 2, we learned how Sarah became interested in jazz enough to become a jazz singer and how her interest in comedy came about to have her dip her hand into comedy, and other influences in her life that affect her career and creativity today. So it's quite an interview. Like I said last week, this is a continuation. And if you liked last week, you'll love this week. You'll find out a lot more about Sarah Infini Takagi, the performer and the person. Now, back to the religion, because you said something very intriguing. You know, you have influences from your grandfather, who was a samurai, and then the Buddhist.
Well, he wasn't a samurai. His side or his ancestors.
Right. Right. But you got Eastern religions with that, and then you got the Christianity.
Right.
How do they blend? Because
Wait,
Christianity.
no, I have to correct you. My grandfather and my great grandfather were Christian ministers.
Oh, okay.
So they were practicing Eastern religion.
Okay.
In fact, in Japan, unlike Korea, which is supposed to have a very large percentage of Christians.
Mm-hmm.
In my country at the time, I heard it's still very, Christians are minorities. And I heard it was like less than 2% are Christians in Japan. So yeah, so it's a very unusual occupation to have at the time. But I'm sorry, going back to your.
So I'm just interested in, the saint that appeared near you. That wasn't a Christian saint. That was
an Indian saint.
An Indian saint. So how do the two jive together, especially with the Christianity side? It tends to be intolerant of other religions.
Right. So I think I said earlier about how when I was 5 or 6, I asked my parents, why are there wars on the planet? And I remember getting an answer that it's often the battles and wars are due to religious differences. I didn't say religious differences. I just said religion. So even at that early age, I basically decided religion was not for me. If anything, I became more of a Unitarian immediately upon that. At that young age, I said, I'm never going to take sides with any religion, because if the religious difference is causing the religious leaders to fight with each other, first of all, I thought that was the most hypocritical things I've ever heard in my life. I mean, I just said, religious people are supposed to lead you to God, but because you're different from the other religion, they're killing each other. That is the most hypocritical, incredibly immature human behavior I've ever heard of. So at the young age, I basically decided I'm not going to be part of religion. So even though I wanted to be like my grandfather, just remember, I wanted to be like him energetically, but I didn't say I wanted to be like him as a Christian minister. So I immediately decided never to commit to any religion. So I've been doing my own investigation since I was little, and I've read every book on religion and spirituality, and I've made my own choices, and I've decided that I've been to a lot of churches, a lot of books, whatever, and what I wanted to see was authenticity, because one of the things that I've noticed going to church was that there were a lot of ministers and pastors that just seemed, let's just say, like, I just didn't believe them. Like, I just felt like, where are they getting these words from? What is their reference? Why do they have an authority to talk? So believe it or not, if you don't know Paramahansa Yogananda, it starts with the autobiography of a yogi, which I think I read when I was 25, around the time of that near death. And if you start with that book, it's just like a jaw-dropping autobiography where he basically um, literally starts communicating with God in a way that's super authentic. And there's just volumes and books and books and books that he's channeled and written where he can't find this information from anywhere else. There was no internet then, and he has information in the home study course that I've done before, a 3-year course, where the information is just so extraordinary that it basically validates the man.
Right.
But he's not the only person I'm following. I've always been a bookworm. I've read every book out there. So I'm talking about, I tended to lean into books by Edgar Cayce, Sanaya Roman, all kinds of channeled books. I started getting into them. So I'm very open-minded, but ultimately, I believe that every person is capable of contacting their divine self, which I think God lives within us and outside. It's infinite. Infinity is my answer. So he's not the only person I follow.
I see.
Yeah. So there's no, and then really, I'm not religious at all.
Right. I understand it now.
Yeah. So does that make sense?
It does. It's for a 5-year-old to have that awareness of even what religion is just flabbergasting. I just can't even wrap my mind
spiritually.
I mean, if I was going to write a character, because I write fiction, and I had a 5-year-old doing it, I'd probably erase it. I said that's not possible. You know.
Well, do you want to hear something else that's even crazier?
Yeah.
So, my sister, who's 7 years older than me, was the opposite of my personality. She was, let's just say she preferred things and was interested in things that I was never interested in. Mm-hmm. For example, she would always tell mom and me, like, oh, I really need to get a Porsche or a Jaguar. Like, I need to make sure that car is mine. I need to live in a castle. I need to, I don't know. She had this very elitist view of the world, very materialistic. And I mean, she had other amazing qualities, but she was always like, she had a lot of material desires that seemed very whatever. I've never had those. But anyway, so one day she came home. I think I was 6 years old. And this is in Japan. And my sister came home from school, elementary school. And she was telling mom, oh my God, mom, I have a crush on my math teacher, Mr. Takayanagi. I forgot what his name was. I know it started with Taka, but he's so cute. He's such a great teacher. I have a crush on him. And I still remember when I said this, and my mom still remembers. Apparently I was 6 years old. I said, why, to my sister, why be interested in human love? Human love is impure. You should consider just loving God.
Wow.
Divine. I said that, and literally my mom and my sister were like, what did you just say? And my mom to this day be like, you were always a weird kid. They just called me weird. They didn't say I was amazing. They just thought, you have very weird thoughts. And that's when they started calling me the alien. So
when people experience something within their own family that's out of their own experience, they don't know where it comes from. It kind of scares them a little bit, I would say.
Yeah, they were always like, are you sure she's the right baby mom? Like, are you sure you didn't like adopt her from somewhere else?
Well, my mother will say to me when I have ideas different from her, she'll say, you have a diseased mind.
I know, but considering both are so narcissistic though, because it basically means if somebody else has a different opinion from yourself, and you're telling the person who has a different opinion you have a diseased mind, it kind of makes the person self-righteous and narcissistic.
Narcissistic, yes. They like you have to be wrong because I can't be.
Right. And that's just crazy.
I want to go back to what you said earlier about being forced into the piano and forced to keep going.
Yeah.
Now, do you think that you were forced because they recognized how extraordinary
Nope.
your abilities were, or they just did it
Well,
because they
I
wanted
mean,
to?
a long time. So in the beginning,
Yeah.
few years, no, it wasn't like I was, well, yeah, I was definitely already good from the beginning because here's what's going on. My sister is 7 years older. My brother is 6 years older. When I started, I was doing Suzuki method, and I don't know if you know about Suzuki method, but Suzuki method is an interesting method where it's not visual. The first few years, they make recordings of all the pieces, and it's a graded method book thing. But every piece is recorded, and the child um, listens to your pieces and basically downloads it sonically before you learn how to read. Um, and apparently, it's Mr. Suzuki, the Japanese guy, came up with this idea, and he said music is a language and it should be taught like a language, which is babies and children learn to speak before we learn how to write. So he said he basically founded this whole method of Suzuki method, which is, and I concur with him. I think music is sound. You should start with the sound first and not the eyes. Whereas most traditional method books anywhere, basically they hand you the score, say, here's the C, and look at that C and find it visually on the keyboard. But now Mr. Suzuki was like, you should just listen to music first, just like you would listen to somebody speak to you. And then you start imitating whatever your mom is saying, and that's how children learn to babble and eventually learn to speak. So anyway, so the advantage of the Suzuki method for me was that my sister and my brother had already gone through the exact same Suzuki books, which means that by the time I started 6, 7 years later, I pretty much had downloaded every song my sister practiced, my brother practiced, which would be the exact same songs. So by the time I came around and I had to learn the same song, basically my mom and everybody said I never, like I could learn every song in like 3 seconds because it was in my body and in my sonic storage. So I learned it like 3 times faster than my brother or my sister. And that could be also why I have perfect pitch, they say, because I could play anything by ear. So for about first 3 years, I didn't even know how to read music.
That's amazing. Wow.
Yeah.
Now, where does the jazz come in? Jazz singing.
Yeah, so I was just writing to my brother about this, but here's what happened. Between my sister and my brother, being the youngest, I leaned towards my brother. And my brother, I just wanted my brother to like me since I was a little baby sister. And he was a super awesome brother. He was very protective. And basically, comedy and jazz were his passions.
Okay.
So ever since I was little, and this is in Japan, my brother would act out all the comedy in Japan. Like, and it was very physical comedy. They did a lot of physical comedy, and he would be funny, and then I would basically learn all the funny antics from my brother, hoping he'll like me more because if I became funnier. So that's the funniest thing. And then as we moved to America, he continued with liking Jerry Seinfeld, and he liked the cartoon series The Wild Side or something like that. Yeah, he just like anything that he liked, I liked because I just wanted my brother to like me. So that's where the comedy came. And then the jazz was also my brother. My brother, one day when he was 12 years old, told my parents, I'm a boy. Piano is sissy. I'm quitting piano and I want to play the trumpet. So my parents let him quit and he started playing the trumpet. And sure enough, he wanted to be a jazz trumpet player. So he started playing jazz. And eventually, at one point, he was super serious. And I think he went up to see Wynton Marsalis in New York City and got like a private free lessons from him. He even stayed at his apartment. became friends with him. And so
Amazing.
my brother was super serious about jazz, and he
Yeah.
still is to this day. Um, but anyway, so he was playing jazz all in the house. And again, I wanted to be just like my brother. So
Yeah.
I didn't start playing jazz piano, but I heard a lot of jazz. And interestingly, I was 16 years old when my amazing teacher sent me to compete in the Music Teacher National Association's competition for high school kids. And it's a state going to Eastern Division to the nationals. And the requirements for that competition that year was 4 pieces in 4 periods plus a concerto. And the concerto that year was the Gershwin Rhapsody in Blue. And guess who won the national champions that year? I
Not
did.
surprised.
And apparently, the comments I kept getting from every judge was, you sound really jazzy. Like you have a natural flair for jazz. You sound very spontaneous. Wow, you play differently from classical pianists, blah, blah, blah. And I thank my brother for it because I've been hearing swing and bebop. And I mean, Gershwin is a real, early jazz guy, but still I was able to swing my Gershwin. So I think that's why it was the edge that got me to win first prize in the national competition. So I feel like jazz has always been a little easier for me because of my brother who got me into comedy and jazz.
Right. That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
So usually, brothers and sisters have a love-hate relationship in themselves, but it sounds like this was a very positive one.
Yeah.
I want to get back into the theme of the show, which is encouraging young people. You're a teacher yourself. You teach piano, and this relates to the thing where you were forced to keep going with the piano. Now, I've known 2 students who were forced to do something, continue playing. It was both hockey. It was a girl and a boy from different eras. Hockey.
Being forced to play hockey?
Forced to be on the hockey team.
Huh.
This was in Swampscott, Mass. It was one of them, and the other one was right here near my town. So the one from the 80s, the father was basically making the kid live for him, for his dreams.
Wow. Yeah.
Wouldn't let him quit the team.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know what the story was with the mother of the girl. It was the same situation. The mother wouldn't let her quit either. Now, having experienced the pain, I know you were in pain because of this, and because I've seen the pain on both of them decades apart.
Right.
How do you keep going? Did you quit for a while? What would you tell younger people? What would you tell younger people who have parents that do that to them? How do you cope?
Okay. Well, first of all, again, I have to remind everyone, by the time I think I was 12 or 13, I was in America again, but it doesn't really matter. I was in the United States because the unit of the universe I was living in is the old-fashioned Japanese family. So I think I was maybe 8th grade or something. I fell into kind of a deep depression about piano. And I think also it was a teenage blues or something. I was just depressed, period. And one day I stayed up and wrote a 10-page letter to my parents and to my teachers, handwritten. Okay.
Wow.
And basically explaining how I have to quit piano. And I try to convince my parents with a final argument that they would save a lot of money if they let me quit. I said something like, you'll save this much amount of money. So I stayed up all night. I put the 10-page letter on the kitchen table. And then in the morning, I went downstairs to the kitchen. And my mom took one look at me silently. And she was like, I happen to have a piece of paper. She looked at me very seriously, and she had nothing to say, and she said, she did this.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
And then threw it into the garbage. And that was the end of our non-discussion.
It was not even
No.
considered.
There you go. So that's why it's so important
Yeah.
in this interview for everyone to understand the difference between cultures.
Because
I couldn't quit.
wow.
But in hindsight now, I'm grateful because so the life lesson is here. I really hated practicing the piano. I really hated my life about it, the whole thing. And I didn't have a childhood. I never went to the prom. I only went to 2 years of high school. I had no social life whatsoever. It really sucked, but I have a nice life now because it's pretty easy. Not just easy, but I have learned to love music, and I have learned to love a lot of things about it, and it's basically my stable source of income. And I'm very grateful to my parents for so now I'm grateful they forced me to continue, because if I had quit then, who knows, like maybe I would not be as happy, because all the comedy and all the other things basically became a branch, because I still had a core job as a piano teacher.
Right.
So I feel grateful. So I don't know what to say, because some American parents might be like, you really should have given your child some choice. It's not fair.
Right.
That's bullying your child. But I have to say, you know what? Sometimes life is hard, and they help me to develop a skill really well at a high level. And I'm grateful now.
Now this explains the next topic that I'm going to bring up, and now I understand it.
It's like this show is about all the questions Leonard's been wanting to ask.
A couple of years ago, you invited me and a lot of other people for an adult play date, and we went out in the snow, and we ran around, and we slid around, and we took that great picture that I always use on my cover page.
Oh,
and so that explains. You just explained why you had the need to do that, because you never got a chance to do that when you were a kid.
There you go. There you go.
Amazing.
Yeah. But it's also very multi-level, because guess what? I mean, everything now ties in together. The jazz, the comedy, the play. The reason is actually when I was living in Japan, I had an amazing childhood. But at the same, I used to live in a neighborhood where nobody locked their doors, and you would come home from school and you would just like drop the backpack off, and you would be out playing for 3 hours until we moved to America. And then America to me was a depressing country, because you had to be chauffeured everywhere to have a play date, and it was so not spontaneous and not independent. And anyhow, I didn't have any play dates anyway. But what it is I think we called it playing the piano.
Yes.
But for me, I felt like when people ask me, what do you do? What do you do for your profession? And maybe some friend might say, oh yeah, she's a concert pianist. Yes, she plays the piano. And I try to correct them. No, for a long time, I didn't play the piano.
Right.
I worked the piano.
Right.
And still this day, I would say the verb play is just wrong. A lot of the classical musicians, whether you play the flute, you play the cello, you play the piano, it really is not play. It doesn't feel like play. You're practicing your butt off.
Right.
That's what it is.
Right.
And however, I feel like the play, Leonard, all that play that has come along was really not necessarily even piano. It's just depression. I went through a huge, long decade of depression. And the jazz, the comedy, and the play has all come about because I felt like I needed to do something to elevate my mood every day. And so I started to play. And play meaning get out of the house. And oftentimes I would just go into nature and climb trees and explore. And then it came from just nature exploration to just play which became improvisation. I started improvising at the
Right.
piano
And
and
that's, yeah.
improv, and that led to improv comedy. I started acting improvisationally, improv piano, which led to me becoming a composer. Um, like improvisation and play kind of go together.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It does, very much so. Now, your path has been the exact opposite of some of the people that have inspired me to do the show.
Okay.
You were forced to do an art, and these kids and people that I know, peers,
Yeah.
were forced not to do their art.
Yeah.
They thought it was
Yeah.
frivolous. The parents thought it was frivolous to be serious about the guitar or the piano,
Yeah.
and so they would have to hide
Yeah.
their musicality from their family. And to this day, some of the people that I know will not play in front of their family because their family would think, they would be laughed at.
Yeah, but can I comment here?
Yeah.
Again, it goes back to my Japanese family. So my sister and I pursued music and became musicians. My brother really wanted to become a jazz trumpet player, and he was super talented. And he was, however, he was secretly majoring in jazz in college until one day my dad, my very manly Japanese father, sat down my brother and said, Ken, what are you doing in college? And eventually my dad found out my brother was trying to be a jazz trumpet player. And then apparently this is what my dad said. Musician is no occupation for a man. The only occupation that's worth pursuing is business. And that's how my brother had to drop music, drop the trumpet, became a political science major, and then he became a businessman, a very successful businessman, but he absolutely had to quit music. So that's not correct. No, the girls, on the other hand, it was a very gender biased parenting. Okay, so if I were a boy, there was no way I would have continued with piano. I would have been forced to do something manly.
Thanks for joining us here on What Do You Want to Do? Show number 7, part 2 of our interview with Sarah Infini Takagi. Next week is part 3, so don't miss that. And until then, what do you want to do?